This is the Living Vertizontal podcast, brought to you by The Church at Riverstone, a fellowship of the Church of the Nazarene in Madera, California. We are a podcast that discusses the intersection of Scripture and our lives. Together, we continue the conversation that was started each preceding Sunday morning in our worship gathering.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nick.
And I'm Natasha.
And we are the Living Vertizontal podcast, back with you this week to continue our journey through the Gospel of Luke together. As a quick reminder, last week in our passage, we moved into Luke chapter 14, looking at verses 1 through 14. And in this passage, Jesus went over to a prominent Pharisee's house for a Sabbath meal. So it was another Sabbath day interaction, but unlike the one we most recently saw, it wasn't in the place of a synagogue. It was at a prominent Pharisee's household, at a feast, at a meal. So while there, Jesus healed a man and essentially asked everybody, like, am I allowed to do this? Is this good to go? Lots of silence, as we talked about. But from this, we discussed our propensity as people to pursue prominence and the invitation that Jesus issued then and issues to us now to surrender our positions to Him, trusting that He sees us. In our episode today, we're going to continue in Luke chapter 14, looking at verses 15 through 24, and we are still going to be at the prominent Pharisee's house for this Sabbath meal, more than likely still taking place around the table. There's no indication in a change of scenery, so it's most likely that we are still in this exact same place, and here we are going to be dropping into another parable of Jesus's. And so I'm going to go ahead and read our passage for today, and then we'll jump into our conversation. So Luke chapter 14, verses 15 through 24. When one of those reclining with him heard this, he said to Jesus, "Blessed is everyone who will eat at the feast in the kingdom of God." But Jesus replied, "A certain man prepared a great banquet and invited many guests. When it was time for the banquet, he sent his servant to tell those who had been invited, 'Come, for everything is now ready.' But one after another, they all began to make excuses. The first one said, 'I have bought a field and I need to go see it. Please excuse me.' Another said, 'I have bought 5 yoke of oxen and I am going to try them out. Please excuse me.' And still another said, 'I have married a wife, so I cannot come.' The servant returned and reported all this to his master. Then the owner of the house became angry and said to his servant, 'Go out quickly into the streets and alleys of the city and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame.' 'Sir,' the servant replied, 'what you ordered has been done, and there is still room.' So the master told his servant, 'Go out to the highways and hedges and compel them to come in, so that my house will be full. For I tell you, not one of those men who were invited will taste my banquet.'" So this is our passage for today. Again, still taking place at this prominent Pharisee's house, and here we are with another parable. Tasha, is there anything that maybe we should know as we head into it?
Well, I feel like in addition to the setting, which I feel like you did nicely earlier.
Thank you.
Good job. I think we should also remember that invitations in this culture, this would have been a common form of invitation, and it's a 2-step invitation.
Right.
So first, you're invited, right? It's kind of like a save the date, but it's has more power behind it.
More staying power, more covenantal agreement.
Right. Yeah, that's probably a good way to put it. So when you get the invitation and then you say, "Yes, I will be there," this now sets in motion a whole bunch of very expensive and lavish and time-consuming preparations. I mean, for us, we send out birthday party invitations. We get the reply, and okay, so we know we need to order 12 party favors because everybody's coming, or we need a cake that can serve 12. If one calls you,
or a couple of pizzas to make sure everybody can eat.
If one calls you and says, "Oh, I won't be there," it's not a huge expense. It wasn't a huge amount of your time. Like, yes, that's a little frustrating. Maybe we could have got one less package on Amazon,
Right.
but you didn't sit there and handcraft every single one of those favors, which
Right.
is essentially what's happening here, right? So,
or hand butcher every
Right.
single one of the animals
Yes.
for this feast.
They're going out and they are based on the RSVPs. They are butchering the animal. They're preparing the meat, right? They're preparing if they need grain for this, they're processing all of that, right? Harvesting it, processing it, utilizing and baking with it. I mean, just all of this stuff, all of these preparations that go into this. It's a very, very labor intensive, time consuming process to prepare for the banquet. And so when you say yes, I mean, that is as good as I will be there, right? Like barring my death in the next, little bit here, I will be there. And so I think this is really important for us to get this clear picture of what comes with this commitment to the invitation. Because if we walk into it with our modern culture and understand, oh, what's the big deal? It's just a party and they're the plans change, it's not that level. This is a slap in the face to the host. This says what you're doing is not important to me, and your effort and your time that you've put into this, your resources you've put into this, it's of little value to me. Yeah.
I mean, if you think about where they're at, this culture is a very honor shame driven culture.
Yes.
And so to communicate, essentially, like to slap the host in the face is a big deal. It's not just a flaky situation that we're seeing here. Like, I think most of us can think about today, people can be wishy-washy at times. Like they make a commitment in one breath and then 2 seconds later, something else happens. So we're not gonna be able to make it. It's like, okay, whatever. We've come to expect that. That's not so here.
Right.
That's not what should have been happening. That's not what like the cultural norms would have expected to happen.
Yes.
People hearing this story
would have been like,
would be very surprised. Yes,
Yeah.
they'd be very surprised that these people had committed to come and now they're not coming.
How dare they do this? Yeah.
We read through it and go, I mean, those excuses are lame, but other people read through it and they're like, they have any excuses?
Well, and I think it's important to remember who Jesus is talking to here as well, right? So we're in the home of the prominent Pharisee. Jesus is reclining with the religious leaders. These are the insiders in the Jewish religious culture, right? And so these are the people who have received the invitation. So when they're hearing this, they're like, why is Jesus talking this way about us, right? We are these people. Why is he saying these horrible, because in their minds, to go back on your invitation is just horrific. And so Jesus is equating us to these people who are doing this horrific deed. I mean, they're seeing themselves in this story, right? And the position that they've been given in the story is not a good one.
Yeah. At our table, really the word that kind of carried the conversation as it pertained to the invitation was covenant. Like we saw this as this was a covenant that they had entered into with the master. We are going to be there. They knew the time, they knew the place, they knew what to expect, and the master knew what to expect of them. So there was this covenant agreement that had taken place, this covenant relationship that had been entered into. And now, as we kind of work through the parable, we see them breaking that covenant relationship.
Yes. And so you had mentioned that the excuses they give in the breaking of this covenant relationships are pretty lame or ridiculous. And so why don't we go ahead and take a moment and kind of systematically work through each of the excuses that were given. And let's really take some time as we do this to focus on what is kind of being represented by the excuse that's there, because obviously this story is a parable. So it's intended to illustrate a point, right? And then also to expose a problem and to hopefully evoke a response. And so why is it that Jesus is using these specific excuses in his story, and what would those represent to the audience that's around then? And what would that look like then in today's culture as well?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess as we look at verses 18, 19, and 20, because those are kind of like the movement of the excuses. The first excuse that we get to is in verse 18, and he said, I have bought a field, and I need to go and see it. Please excuse me.
And this is absurd, right? I mean, no one's going to buy a field with land unseen, because this isn't just buying a field. This is an investment in the soil that's there. It's the water sources that are available to be able to provide, for what eventually is going to be done with this field. You would be inspecting all the boundaries. You want to make sure you know what you're buying. This isn't something where they have, here's the blueprint picture, like we can do easily today.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's not an option. And so
no Google Earth images.
You may even want to see what, if there's crops already planted on it, you may want to see what their yield is like, right?
Sure.
You're going to, this isn't a business investment. You are not going to just buy a field willy-nilly. And ordinarily I'd be like, no one buys a house unseen. But then again, there's been times in our life where this has been
we didn't have
requirement.
a choice. Yeah.
So I won't go that far because there may be other people who are like, no, that's not true. We have done this. But I mean, this is a big business investment. And even when we did buy our house, like unseen, we had the technology available to people sent us pictures. They walked the property on our behalf. With a video. And so we had essentially visited the property, though we hadn't been able to be there in person. And so this is a ridiculous explanation for why to miss. And I think this is important, and you'll see this theme continue to reappear throughout, but this is it's nonsense. And everybody knows it. The people sitting in this room know that this is a ridiculous reason to give the host.
Yeah.
And so the question is, really, why does Jesus use this particular example, knowing how ridiculous it is?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I mean, around our table, you kind of step back from it and go, well, I'm probably not going to be buying a field ever, even if I have seen it. I don't just have that extra cash sitting around. So this doesn't seem like it fits me, but obviously it's a parable of Jesus's, and somehow it's got to fit me. So we kind of talked about it around our table, and we're like, okay, so how can we boil this down to maybe apply?
What's this field represent?
And as we talked about it, the word that came to that we came to a consensus around was possessions. Like, this is indicative of possessions becoming a distraction from where my focus, where my attention ought to be, or where this person's focus and attention ought to be. They ought to be focused and prepared to attend this feast, this banquet that they committed to, and instead they became distracted by this field that they have purchased. They became distracted by their possessions.
Yeah, in my midweek meditations, there's a table to fill out for this, and under in the table that I filled out, I wrote, "My stuff is most important." And so that's kind of what's being revealed here, is that for this particular individual who says, "I've bought a field and I must go out and see it," I mean, they're out there to inspect their possessions, to just sit in awe of what they have, what they've acquired, and this sounds ridiculous because we're probably not sitting out, avoiding our commitments because we're going to go sit out at a field.
Yeah.
But we may have possessions or other things that take our attention and time that cause us to miss out on our figurative kingdom banquet right here.
Our opportunities to participate in the now things that Jesus might be calling us to in that moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so let's continue on. Into verse 19, we come to another excuse, and this individual says, "I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I am going to try them out. Please excuse me."
What comes to my immediate attention is 5 yoke of oxen is a lot.
That is a lot. These are 5 teams.
Yes, this is not like an individual, like little farming venture.
Sure.
This is a massive enterprise. And it sounds like this massive enterprise just got much massiver.
Yeah.
And so this is like you just got this incredible new business opportunity and you want to go explore all the ways that this business opportunity is going to make you more productive, more profitable. And so it sounds on its surface very similar, I think, possibly to the first excuse.
Yes.
And we talked about this at our table. And so it's easy to kind of gray those together because it sounds like, oh, I'm excited about my field and I'm excited about my oxen.
Yep.
And those sound like both possessions.
Yes.
But if you get to the heart of what's here is I must go out and see the field. or I am going to try them out. And so in the verse 18 excuse, this is like to sit and be enamored with what you possess.
Yes.
Right. Whereas this one is it's an action. It's a doing.
Yep.
Right. And so I think that's while it's very, very slight differences, that's where I think you can get the difference in why Jesus would use these two examples, because Jesus doesn't usually include two examples just for the sake of including two examples. Usually there's intention behind each and every single one.
Sure. Yeah. And I agree. Like it would be easy to lump these things together. However, I do believe there is a very important distinction between the two. Like you pointed out, one is this possession conversation, whereas the other, at our table again, we boil down to like, he's distracted by the task at hand. So yes, there is possessions that are here, right? 5 teams of oxen. He's possessing those things, but he's not just holding them. Like you said, he's not just looking at them. He is going to try them out. Like he is going to go work. He's going to see how things fit. And so he is going to work.
Right. His ultimate goal is productivity.
Yes.
And efficiency.
Right.
And for me, like this just screamed time. Yeah. My time is more important. The tasks I can accomplish with my time, my productivity is most important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of takes us into verse 20 then, where our final excuse comes up, pretty short, but this other says, I have married a wife, so I cannot come. What are we seeing here?
Well, I think if you don't read any cultural context into this, it would be easy to say, well, this sort of like a love interest or this relationship is taking my priority, right? And so that's one way to look at it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think that is probably an okay way to look at it, especially as we look at it in our culture. But I think it's also important for us to see the other side of this. And that is that during this time, marriages were not usually something that either of the parties had much of a say in, right? These were mostly arranged. And usually it was some sort of strategic alliance, right? So you were marrying into a particular family for the purposes of networking, for the purposes of status improvement, for the purposes of what you could gain from that relationship. And so when we think of relationship in what Jesus is particularly addressing here, he's talking about, securing social alliances or climbing a ladder, which is a little bit different than just saying, well, I have this love interest that's my distraction, though that can very much become a distraction and keep us from attending the kingdom things Jesus wants us to be a part of.
Sure. Yeah, I think around our table, what we boiled this down to is we said relationships, and I think that can very easily lump in everything you were just talking about.
Yeah.
Whether it's this relationship and my love interest being a distraction, or whether it's my striving for the right relationships for the networking purpose, it's all the same thing. That the relationship, the pursuit of the relationship, or the engagement of the relationship has become the distraction. That is taking my attention, my focus off of where it ought to be, which is the banquet. And so we have these 3. Somebody at our table made the statement, really weak excuses that are issued, and everybody sitting at this Sabbath meal with Jesus, hearing this parable,
they're going to agree.
they're gonna hear them and go, yeah, these are really weak excuses. There is no reason that you can give, that you should give, to negate the covenant that you have entered into to attend this banquet.
Well, and I mean, we just kind of were wrapping up the marriage one, but we've spent a lot of time studying marriages in this Luke section recently, where we've looked at the context of what marriages, all that they entailed. Right. And this is not a short process.
No.
We know that this is a very long process. And so you had
Yes.
You knew you were going to be married.
You knew.
And so this,
even if you didn't know the like specific moment, like when this person came to invite you to their banquet, you knew, hey, there's a chance that this might happen at the same time. And so you would at least have that conversation with them.
Right. It's not like it's in the same. Yeah. It's not the same like as, oh, I'm actually getting married today. So
Yeah.
that's not going to work out for us.
And even if it is, I'm actually getting married today. Like, well, then you
You
probably
should have said
shouldn't agree
something,
to the
right.
banquet, right? That entered that covenant relationship.
Right. This is something else entirely. And like you said, it's prioritizing the relationships. It's prioritizing the expectations of being a part of this new family over the commitments made.
Right. Yeah. So now we move on. Jesus moves on from working through these excuses or identifying these excuses to verse 21, where the servant who now was the one who was sent out, right, to call the people that for that second phase of the invite, right, saying, okay, now's the time. He now returns.
Yeah, he's the excuse collector.
Right. Yeah. Yes. That's what he ends up being.
Yes.
So now that servant, the excuse collector, has returned, and now he reports to his master all these excuses. And understandably, the master who had issued this invitation, who had heard back from these people and planned accordingly to what he had heard back, is pretty frustrated. Scripturally, it says that he became angry. And then he says to his servant, go out quickly into the streets and the alleys of the city and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame. And the servant responds with, what you've said has already been done. Like we've gone where we can to find people, and there's still more room. And then the master says, okay, if you've already gone everywhere you can around here, go further, cast a bigger net, go out to the highways, go out to the hedges, bring everybody in that you can, so that my house can be full.
And so recognizing that this is a parable, I think when we put ourselves in the shoes of the people sitting with Jesus, right? We recognize that as people who are reclining at his banquet table, as people who are hoping to be in the kingdom, right? The gentleman who first spoke said, blessed is everyone who will eat at the feast in the kingdom of God. So as those who we believe are going to be at this feast in the kingdom of God, we hear this parable, and you would think that they would say, well, I'm definitely not the person at the highways and hedges, right? I'm not outside of all this. I think I'm an insider.
Yeah.
Right? I'm here. And they probably would have looked at the highways and hedges, and they would have said, those are like the Gentiles. Those are those people, those evil, wicked people who are worshiping pagan gods. Like they are so far gone, they're not worth helping. Okay. And so I'm not them.
Right.
I'm also not the sinners who are now blind, crippled because of my family sin or because of my sin. I'm not those people who are the marginalized of the insiders.
Right.
So that means that I am an insider. I'm the people that are already sitting and
the ones that have received the invitation,
being welcomed, into this kingdom. And this invitation, when they hear it, right? This is this invitation that came from the promise given to Abraham and to Isaac and to Jacob and passed down through the Israelites over generations. And so because I am a Jew, I am a part of this powerful history of invitation into God's kingdom. And so if I put myself in their shoes, this is what I'm thinking, right? Now, I am not a Jew by descent or by heritage.
Right.
And so I'd be in that Gentile category.
Sure.
So, but from their perspective, they're hearing this and saying, wait a minute. So Jesus, you're saying that we might miss out on the kingdom? You're warning us that Jesus, just because we're a Jew, just because we're a son or daughter of Abraham, doesn't mean that we're in for sure.
Yeah.
That we have to be ready. That it's an urgent calling. That you're asking us to do things and to put your kingdom as number one in our life.
Well, I mean, in this parable, he's almost, in a way, when you think about it that way, he's levying an accusation that in fact the insiders are not putting the kingdom first. Like they have this invitation, and these insiders there was not a single insider that was mentioned in this parable that received the invitation and then showed up to the feast. Every single one of them gave an excuse, gave some kind of weak excuse, whether it was because of possession, whether it was because of like the tasks that they had in front of them, productivity, or whether it was like the jockeying in relationships. This one talked about like a wife. It could have been, trying to elevate their position, whatever. Like every single one of them had an excuse, and they didn't go to the banquet.
Right. And so you hear this like loud warning from Jesus in this room. I am imagining they must have, right? Misplaced priorities will cost you the kingdom that you so desperately want to be a part of, that you say, blessed is he, right? Yeah. If you really mean that, if you truly mean that, do not fall into this trap of misplaced priorities, because it is oh so easy.
Yeah.
Because these things often sound good, but they are not best.
Yeah.
And so then, right, we fast forward, and it would be irresponsible of us not to say, well, but this parable is also for us today. Yeah. And Jesus continues to speak through his word to us today. And so if we put ourselves now into this category, I don't think that sitting here, I would still be in the hedges and highways because I'm a Gentile.
Right.
I think that I'm one of the ones who's received the invitation because Jesus has pursued me, and I've acknowledged his pursuit of me, and I have agreed to make him Lord and King of my life.
So you've entered that covenant relationship.
Right. So I've sent in my RSVP. Yes, Jesus, I am for you. I am a Christian. I am yours, right? And so I sent in my RSVP. And the question is, when I'm sitting there going through life, doing the mundane, right? And Jesus comes knocking, and Jesus says, hey, I need you to do this today, or this moment needs to be this way, or I need you to consider these things, or consider spending your resources, allocating your time, moving yourself into this particular position to network with these individuals and build this relationship over here. Am I ready to do that at a moment's notice? Or am I too preoccupied with my misplaced priorities that I miss that second call, that second invitation to go and sit at his banquet table?
Yeah.
And I think this is a powerful warning still, even for us today, because misplaced priorities will cost us the kingdom.
Yeah. And I think that what you just brought up there is a very important thing, because it would be easy to misrepresent or misunderstand and hear this and say, okay, well, it's just a matter of me making sure that I am ready when he returns for that second invitation, because that's when I need to make sure I'm ready for the kingdom. And really what you just kind of teased out and what you were talking through was now. Every moment now is the second invitation to continue to participate in his kingdom, right? Because the kingdom is here now. Yes, and yet to come. There is this dichotomy that exists. We've talked about it. We've talked about the Venn diagram, right? The overlapping circles. But even though there is a kingdom that is yet to come, there is a kingdom that is here and now and among us, and we are invited to participate even now. So this invitation that we are seeing in the parable, like the second invitation, right? The calling to attend the banquet, we are hearing that calling to attend the banquet every moment, right? Jesus is speaking to us. We believe Jesus speaks to us directly through his spirit. We believe Jesus speaks to us directly through his body, the church, right? Our fellow brothers and sisters in Christ, as they are following him, can be used as mouthpieces to speak to us from him, right? So we hear from his spirit directly, we hear from his body, the church, and we hear from scripture from him, right? And so there are all these different avenues where Jesus is speaking, where we are being called to come, we are being beckoned to come. And the question is, are we responding, or are we too distracted? Because this is a moment by moment now mentality that we must have. It's not in the future when the second coming happens, in the future when the rapture arrives, whatever, right? This is not that.
Jesus is looking to build his kingdom now. He wants people to experience his kingdom now. And he's choosing to work through the church to accomplish this.
Right.
And when his church, the invited, are too distracted by all the other things we have
Yes.
going on, right? By our stuff or by our productivity or by our social status, then we miss out on this opportunity to participate in the little things he has for us each day, each moment that
Right.
work toward building this beautiful kingdom on earth that he wants to create even now.
Right.
And so as Christians, I think it's very, very important for us to evaluate, allow this parable to speak to us today. Jesus, which of these excuses am I most prone to give? Have I given any of these today? Jesus, have I given any of these in the last week? Jesus, help me not to be so distracted by my priorities that I miss out on what you have for your kingdom building today or tomorrow or this next week or this next year. And then recognize too that Jesus is not a condemning God. Conviction is good and it is beautiful. And so when you hear Jesus say, man, you missed this, when they sit around this table and they hear this warning of, oh my goodness, we're doing a really bad job of participating in his kingdom. This is a call to reorient our lives. And Jesus,
it's not a condemnation.
No, he is with us. He's with us 100%. You should think of him as your greatest cheerleader, as your coach on the sideline who really believes you can do this, right? He is rooting for you. He is ready to pick you up when you fall and dust you off and say, well, get the next one.
Yeah.
And so when you hear his spirit lovingly convicting you, remember that he puts his arm around you and says, I am so proud of you. I am so proud that you're making this correction with me. I'm so proud you've listened to me even for this moment. And don't worry about that other one. Yeah, we may have made a mess in that. We may have some cleanup to do, but it's okay. We will get the next one. And I'll help you through the cleanup. If there's cleanup, I'll be with you through it. And I'll show you what to do next. And that is the loving God that we have. And it's so awesome and amazing to be a part of this kingdom. And that's why it's so, so good. And that's why we can celebrate in our conviction, because Jesus is working to build this beautiful kingdom through each and every one of us. And he is for us and he is with us.
Yeah. You know, when I think of the word conviction, rather than it being this negative thing, I find hope in conviction, because that just means that he's not done with me, right? He's not giving up on me. He's still calling. He's still beckoning me to return. He's reminding me, hey, you responded to the invitation. Now come and participate in my kingdom in this way, in this moment, right now. Around our table, we talked about how important this now moment is. And one of the individuals sitting at our table just brought up, kind of looking broken, and she brought up, she's like, I feel like that's been the problem. Like this last year, I've just very much been living in a distracted way, to put it kind of succinctly. And she was like, I've been missing the invitation. And what I tried to remind her of is very much like what you are saying, Natasha, is that, you know, I believe that Jesus is celebrating this recognition that maybe you've been living distracted over this last year, and he doesn't want to continue to harp on this last year, but even right now in this moment is a now moment where he is inviting you into participation in this banquet in his kingdom going forward. And so I think that we all need to remember that, you know, when we get those moments of conviction, when we get to those places where we recognize, man, maybe I have been distracted. The enemy of our lives wants nothing more than to be distracted, even by the fact that we've been distracted, and to get down on ourselves. But Jesus, our greatest cheerleader, our coach, the one who is calling us, he wants nothing more than to say, okay, let's put that behind us. Now is a now moment to participate. Now let's do it. Don't worry about what has passed. Let's do this together. Now is your time to respond. And so this week, today, this moment, this is your now moment. not to run ahead and just do something good, quote unquote, but to listen and to respond to the invitation. How is it that Jesus might be inviting you to participate in his kingdom now? Because right now is your moment to respond.
As you journey with us through the Gospel of Luke, we recommend purchasing Midweek Meditations, A Journey Through Luke, Part 5, which is available for purchase on Amazon. Also, be sure to follow the Living Vertizano podcast to stay current on all our new releases. To learn more about the Church at Riverstone, visit us at thechurchatriverstone.org.